Hi guys, welcome back to the Vegan Vanity Fair. For today's video, Steven and I are going to be talking to you guys about why we became vegan, how long we've been vegan, what the journey to it was like. So this is not a makeup tutorial in any sense. Steven and I don't come from a vegan or vegetarian background. We were raised eating meat. So that's not something we had in our advantage. We had to, learn everything about veganism and being vegetarian. We both come from families that didn't really understand what the heck we were doing. So we're just gonna talk to you guys about our journey and what that was like. So I became vegan about 4.5 years ago. I was vegetarian for a little while before becoming vegan. I did try being vegetarian back in high school, but I ended up, getting sick because of it. And it's not that the vegetarian diet made me sick. I made myself sick because I had no idea what I was doing. I was literally just eating salads. That's the only thing I would eat because I didn't know any better. I just, I had the right idea. I just didn't know how to go about it. And coming from a Hispanic family, they were no help at all. I mean, they were thinking I was crazy and like, where am I going to get my protein from? What about this? You're going to get sick. And what they said was exactly what happened. I ended up getting sick. And, when it come to having like dinner with the family, I was, the black sheep. Like, I was not fitting in. So I stopped doing that. But like I said, I did have the right idea. It's something that I had been wanting to do for a really long time. I feel like my heart was in the right place, but it just wasn't the right time. So once I graduated high school, I got into Texas A&M, the one in Kingsville, because that's where the King Ranch is at, and I wanted to study large animal science. I wanted to be a large animal veterinarian. So I got into the program, and I did that for 1 year because I found myself getting into the mindset of seeing these animals as a product and not as actual beings. That's something it's a bittersweet thing that happened to me. It's good that it happened because when someone tries to argue with me about veganism, I know how meat is produced. I know what these animals go through. But at the same time, it also makes me really sad that I was a part of that. And like I said, it's a bittersweet feeling about it. One thing I am never going to forget is there was this professor who had a little bunny farm. And he would harvest these bunnies for restaurants in the area. So he was expecting an inspector within the next few days. So for extra points in our class, he made us go clean out the bunny farm. When they opened the bunny farm, you guys, it was like one of those like PETA videos of like 20 bunnies crammed into one cage. And I remember we could not breathe from the bunny hair and the ammonia. If any of you guys have ever owned bunnies, you know that the hair is really, really thin. It's almost like cat hair. So imagine just like cages and cages and just so many. There were like 3 or 4 rows of just cages filled with bunnies. I remember at the end, I actually had to throw away my contacts because like I could not clean them out. Like there was just bunny hair everywhere. My shirt, my contacts, like up my nose. It was horrible. And I remember at that point, like all I cared about was the point, like the extra points that I was gonna get for my class. But seeing that was just absolutely disgusting and heartbreaking. And if it hadn't been for the fact that he was expecting the inspector to go visit in a few days, he wouldn't have cleaned that. He wouldn't have even cared. So that's one thing I'm never going to forget. Another thing that I got to experience while being in A&M was the cows. You guys have probably seen them in like PETA videos or like Mercy for Animals. the cows that have like the holes on the side of their stomach, they're called cannulas. And the reason why we did that is so that we could see which feed the cows were able to digest better, therefore giving us as farmers a better product. So it's something that you can like literally like open and close, like it has like a little removable seal basically, and you're able to get your hand in there and see how the cow's stomach is processing whatever food we gave them. And that was just, it's so, at that point I was like, oh, I'm learning something new. This is going to give me a better product. This is going to help my livestock, process the food better, and I'm going to be able to see what food benefits them, which therefore would benefit me. But now, as a vegan, that is one of the most cruel things ever. Like, imagine just like walking around with a hole in your stomach and people just like put their hand in there and like feel around. That has to be one of the worst things, for sure. Another thing that I was involved in was the livestock judging team. We went around a few ranches in North Texas to judge the animals, and the reason why we would judge them is because depending on the structure of the animal, that's how we knew if this cow was going to be good for reproducing, or if she was going to be good only for milking, or if we should just send her to slaughter. So that's something I learned. I still, if I see an animal, I still know how to judge it, per se. I still know how to tell you, oh, this one would be good for milking, this one would be good for reproducing. That's just something that's still fresh in my mind, unfortunately. And like I said, I started getting into that disgusting mindset, and it's something I regret, but at the same time, I'm so glad I learned it, because anytime someone comes up to me and tells me, oh, that's not real, oh, they treat them fine. No, they don't. They experiment with them. They don't care about their feelings. It's not an animal. It's a product, and you're going to make profit out of it. That's what they are, really. So like I mentioned, I did that program for only 1 year. I got the hell out of there. I started studying psychology instead. I moved to Austin, and I was so glad, because Austin is such a vegan, vegetarian friendly city, and I feel like it was a step in the right direction. So now I've been vegan for about 4.5 years now. In the beginning, it was difficult, not so much with my parents anymore, because I explained to them what I had seen, the things I had done in A&M. But it was difficult with my friends, because it was a typical response of, oh, well, I'm not the one hurting them, I'm not the one killing the animal. But you have to remember that you're basically paying someone to do that for you. So that was the most difficult thing. And, when I tried to be vegan and I would hang out with my friends, a lot of times I would end up just like ordering vegetarian food, because we would go places that they had like no vegan stuff. Like even the fries were like cheese fries with bacon. So I would get like cheese fries or like mac and cheese. But once I got home, I would have my like lentils and quinoa and like plant-based stuff. So the second time I tried being vegan, and then I tried being vegetarian and then vegan, it was a lot easier, and I actually found my mom helping me out a lot. She would, cook lentils for me, or like pasta, and we would go to like Whole Foods and Central Market and like look for like chicken and beef. So the second time was definitely easier, like I said, because my parents knew the reason why I was doing it, and they knew I had a good reason for it. And also I took the time to learn more about it, and this time I didn't end up getting sick, because I knew what I was doing. So yeah, that's my story about why I'm vegan. And if anyone comes up to me and has questions about livestock and the way they're raised, I know how to defend myself and I stand my ground. And like I said, it's a good thing that I went through that because I have my facts straight. So yeah.
So I'm originally from Key West, Florida, and I grew up fishing all the time. My dad is a charter boat captain. We would always go out fishing on the weekends, when he was available. I entered a number of tournaments, and it became a routine for me. I think that there's a time in everyone's life where they question what they do and how they're doing it and how they're living and how it affects others. I think mine came at a young age, but it was probably too young for me to understand what I could do about it. I think with the way the technology has advanced and the internet and just the global community is now closer together than ever before, I think it makes it a lot easier for people to make the switch from being, living a lifestyle that harms animals to one that doesn't. Like I said, it was always something that I thought about, but I never really knew how to change or what to do to make that change. I always felt a connection with animals on a different level. Even lizards and spiders and ants. Every time I would, accidentally, hurt one or kill one, by stepping on it or something silly like that, I would always think about that and regret whatever happened. But I never put two and two together thinking that the meat on my plate is from an animal. When I would go out fishing, we would catch the fish, my dad would clean it, and we'd eat it later that night. I always kind of had that disconnect. I understood that I caught the fish, and I understood that I was eating the fish later on, but the process in between, I kind of kept out of sight, out of mind. It wasn't until I was probably 11 or 12, I was out fishing with my stepdad, and we were catching snapper just off the side of the road. And we take the fish and put it in a cooler and wait for it to die, essentially. It was about 30, 40 minutes later, and you can still hear them flipping in the cooler, trying to get out, trying to breathe, slowly dying. And then we were going to have fish later on that night, so my stepdad took the fish out and started to clean it. The fish was still alive, and I could tell as he was doing it, he wasn't the most excited about the process either. So that was probably the first real moment that I kind of drew that connection between how I was living my life and how it was affecting others. Again, I was still too young. The internet wasn't really that up and coming at that time, and the vegan community, especially in Key West, was very, very scarce, if anything. It wasn't until 2010, or late 2009 actually, when I decided to finally make a change and to be more committed to living a vegan lifestyle. At first I started, vegetarian in November of 2009. Cheese was something that, like most people, you say you can't give up. And it was difficult. And I think that's just because of my my background and lifestyle. And I think that's the same with everybody. 2010, I decided I was going to become vegan. And the film that kind of pushed me to that point was Food Inc. You know, I saw how the animals were treated, how the chickens were treated, the cows, the basic stuff. I don't think Food Inc. was that in depth as far as like trying to convince people to go vegan. There was a lot that they left out, which I can say like from looking back on it. But it was something that kind of eased people in that direction, which I think is very important. So at that time, I decided to become vegan. There were times when I kind of had a little bit of a relapse and went back to just being vegetarian. And there was one time during that period where I did have fish again for one night. But after doing that, I couldn't do it again. And the reason why I did it was because it was hard to be in that family style atmosphere when you're the only person who's not contributing to the death and suffering of animals, especially if it's something that you believe strongly in, like I did and still do. Sitting around a dinner table while you had to make something special just for you, while everyone else is, eating the turkey or the chicken or the steak on their plate or the burgers that just came off the grill. Yeah, so having to explain to people why you made that choice and why you're eating the way you do, it gets tiring after so long. You kind of just say, okay, fine, I'm going to eat cheese, or I'm going to, just try to eat, normal stuff that everyone else is eating, per se, just to kind of quell the questions. But after a while, you get used to it, and you really realize that your morals and ethics are far more important than trying to fit in with everyone else. And I think there's a point in everyone's life, I think I mentioned this before, that you put two and two together. It's just how you act on that determines, your life from that point forward. I think most people that aren't vegan still understand where meat comes from. They still understand how the animals are treated and how the animals are raised, but they don't act on it because of convenience, because of how they were raised, and because they're afraid of change. I think people in general are afraid of change, no matter how big or how small that is. It just takes a little bit of extra to make that change. And it's not only changing your life, but it changes everyone around you. It makes them take a deeper look into what they're doing and how they're living their life. And it also, helps the lives of the animals, which is the biggest reason why I went vegan. I think it's very important now, more than ever, especially with the way social media is playing a major role in everyone's daily lives, is to really show others that living a vegan lifestyle is not only positive for ourselves, but can make a huge difference in the lives of others as well. I think it's easier for people to get this point across, for people to show others that it's not as difficult as they may think, and that there are tons and tons of options out there for people to choose from. Even though it might come off as preachy, I think it is kind of the duty of every other vegan to try to get as many other people on board as possible. Some people don't feel comfortable with that because they don't like to be preachy, or they don't want to come off as preachy. But at the same time, this is something that's important, not just for our overall health, but for the environment, for the safety and the lives of millions and millions of other animals out there that don't have a voice. It might be cliche to be a voice for the voiceless, but it's the truth. And that's my story.
So this is the reason why Steven and I decided to tell you guys our stories about how we became vegan, why we became vegan. Like I mentioned, we both come from backgrounds in which, I was raising cows for slaughter. Steven was out there catching fish for tournaments and having it for dinner and whatnot. So neither one of us grew up with the idea of being vegan or vegetarian. That's something we had to learn, and I'm really glad we did it, and I don't see myself ever going back to eating meat. I mean, it's just something I'm never going to do again, because the guilt that I would feel about going back to eating meat, or being at a party and there's the only thing there is to eat is like chicken or something. The guilt, I would not be able to live with myself, honestly. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and make sure you give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and I hope you end up telling people about our stories, or if you want to go ahead and show them this video and be like, if they can do it, so can you. So thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you later. Bye.